I don't know if you guys missed it, but a moment ago, Kate had to drink something and she had to hold on to her hat, her disc, and lean very carefully back. And I just hope that we can get a clip of that in slow-mo because it was really good for me.
I'm
It's
dead.
called.
It's just like, it's such a work of art. Kate, your
So
commitment
good.
and dedication
The commitment is all there.
awe-inspiring.
Welcome to the Sober Curator podcast, where sobriety isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's the ultimate life hack. I'm Alysse Bryson, your fearless guide to a world where hangovers are canceled, fun is mandatory, and we still know how to shut down a dance floor, just with better shoes.
And I'm Tamar Routly, aka T-Bouge, your co-pilot, chaos coordinator, and the one who keeps Alysse from turning this podcast into a full-blown reality show. Buckle up, sober party people.
From lifestyle and travel to pop culture and zero-proof cocktails, we're serving up the stories, trends, and guests that prove sobriety isn't just about what you're missing. It's about finally remembering where you left your keys. Let's get the party started. Welcome to what is probably going to be the best episode of the Sober Curator ever. Actually, maybe we're the Sober Housewives. We don't know. My name is Alysse Bryson. I am the founder of the Sober Curator, and I am hanging with a bunch of my favorite sober gals today. And we're going to be talking about the things we love to talk about the most, which is the Real Housewives of whatever city we feel like talking about. And before we jump into the conversations, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves as the real self, not their faux self. For today, let's start with you, Amy Liz Harrison.
Okay, hi, I'm Amy Liz Harrison, posing today as Kim Richards.
Megan Swan.
Hi, I'm Megan Swan, a wellness coach and consultant, posing today as Luann de Lesseps.
Thank you so much. Anne Marie.
Hello, I'm Anne Marie Cribbin. I am the founder of Thirsty for Wonder. I'm posing as Sutton Strack today, and I'm here with Merce and the Purse.
And Kate. We can't wait to meet you, Kate.
I'm Kate Vitela. I'm not posing as anything. I am fabulous.
It's true. It's true you are. And you're crushing it, Kate. And last but not least, Alexandra.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Nyman, she, her pronouns. I am the publisher of the Sober Curator and the founder of the nonprofit organization, the Break Free Foundation. And while I am not as fabulous as this housewife, we are both New Yorkers. So I chose Leah McSweeney. Although if we weren't doing the sober edition, I probably would have picked like Brandy Redmond just because the ginge.
Awesome. Love this so much for everyone on this call. All right, so we're going to get right into it. And we want to start with Beverly Hills because that is the freshest season that has just dropped just a few episodes. And I am still recovering from last season and how they treated Kyle and her being sober. Like, I actually had a real problem with it. And every time I sat down to write about it, I just got so frustrated. I just like walked away, and I've started and stopped that piece like multiple times. So when Anne Marie reached out to me a week ago or so and was like, we need to talk about this, I was like, yes, we absolutely do. Let's do it with everyone, and let's do it in costumes. And so here we are. So that's what I want to start. I want to start talking about how Kyle was treated in last season. And it's even come up a little bit, not as bad yet in this season, but it's even been a little bit. And I think the problem I have is like, because, she was always referred to as the fun one with her crazy ass splits and dance floor moves. And so now that she doesn't drink, it's almost like they're casting her as not fun. And I have a real problem with that. So who wants to jump in first? Go ahead, Anne Marie.
Thanks. Yeah, just like you, Elise, there were so many moments on last season where I was super cringing at the way that her sobriety was handled with the rest of the cast. I thought, I'll just dive into it. I thought the lack of understanding around some of her maybe questioning her sexual orientation, relationship with Morgan. I was blown out of the water at the lack of understanding around that. Like that when you let go of alcohol, when you let go of a numbing agent, all of these parts of ourselves are numbed. And maybe they could give her some grace around figuring out who she is as a person without alcohol in her system. There were so many moments that I was just like, I'm really shocked at this group of women not having enough awareness around that. And just the way that she was treated. I agree with you too, that she's being portrayed as super, super boring and not fun since she has chosen sobriety.
And I just don't think that's fair. I mean,
Mhm.
she's still obviously fun and loves her family and has so much zest for life. And like I would hear her saying, things like the clarity and how good she's feeling in her body and her new fitness regime that she got really excited about, and like those should all be things that are celebrated. And I know that the Housewives franchise is not necessarily known for everybody celebrating each other. Like people watch for the drama, they watch for the digs. I get it. That's not lost on me. But it's 2024. It's almost 2025. We can do better, right? We can do better.
Who Googled the country singer that Kyle hangs out with, Morgan? Who Googled her expecting her to be Kyle's sponsor? I personally was convinced this whole time that maybe Morgan was secretly like her sober companion, and they weren't really putting that out there because Morgan
Mhm.
has quite a bit more sobriety. And all of a sudden she shows up on the scene. So I'm like, sober companion, turns out she's a real country singer and has an amazing voice. But I couldn't help but put those two together. I was just curious to see if anyone else kind of wondered that.
I wondered for sure. And I have to say that for me, one thing I've been I don't know if I want to use the word impressed about, but I've noticed a change in Kyle's behavior is she just seems more grounded now that, and she's got the changes with, Mauricio is not there, and she just doesn't trash talk him, and she doesn't kind of stoop to some levels, and I appreciate that about her. She just seems like a sober person to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hashtag sober, not boring.
Yeah, emotional sobriety, right? Yeah, there's so much evidence of her emotional, emotional sobriety.
I can't help but notice that how much a lot of the treatment has to be related to jealousy, because now she has this like not that she wasn't before, but she is smoking hot. She's in the best shape of her life. She's glowing. She's upbeat, and some of the other people on the show are maybe in not such a good place in their lives and are maybe turning to their bad habits.
Well, and to echo that, Kate, as we all know, everybody on this room
Mm.
knows that the way that any of them are reacting in any episode in any city to the non-drinker, it says way more about how they feel about themselves and how they feel about their own drinking, and that they don't want to have guilt and shame on their own drinking. And so that's where the jabs and the pointed fingers kind of come in too.
Yeah, I totally echo that. I was going to say something similar, but I think also it speaks more to just how normalized it is in society. So she's the rebel here. She's doing the thing that's better for her health, better for her mental clarity, better for her family, better for her relationships. And I think there's just a lot of the shame is a piece, but I think there's a lot of fear in the unknown of those that are just doing what they've always been doing. Like maybe they're actually missing out on something better, but it just seems so far away and hard to get to that place that they'd rather just judge her for, not maintaining her identity as they knew her previously.
It's also like, at least to me, I think it's a very predictable response. I worked in reality TV for 2 years, and there's so much manipulation that goes on behind the scenes with producers looking to elicit a certain reaction. So for this to become Kyle's storyline, it totally makes sense. And for them to want to kind of guide the cast down a certain narrative, it's very ignorant, number one. And number two, it says a lot more about the perspective of the actual producers on the show than it really does about the cast, because they're the ones who are leading them towards these comments and
Oh, for sure.
eliciting these reactions. So many times you would see them, pull girls into a room. They'll review footage completely out of context. They're drinking the entire time. And then they unleash them into a party where there's more alcohol. And we're hearing, with the Real Housewives franchise in particular, more people speaking up about that. We've also seen that with other Bravo shows, with them talking about how there's so much pressure to drink and so much pressure to seem fun and like super like larger than life. And it's really sad that they can't focus more so on storylines similar to Margaret Joseph's, where she'll sip a mocktail or she'll sip soiree from her own brand and show that she can still have fun and be sober.
Can I just ask a question? If anybody, because I was thinking about this the other day with some really popular songs these days and how like alcohol is the focus. And so to me, I mean, because I grew up on like Ally McBeal and all these sort of like badass power women downing at least a bottle of red to themselves at the end of and reading Drink, understanding like that was strategic marketing. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some big alcohol behind this brand and like just towing the party line on that.
For sure. They've been sponsored, like each season will have various alcohol sponsors. And so if they go to a club, they're not just going there. They're going there because the production is paying for them to be there, and they're paying for them to have bottle service, to have and draw in more and more customers. Everything is very intentional and is built into the budget of the show.
I love that you brought up production, Alex. That's such a relevant point. In my own just, getting ready for today and prepping and research and stuff, probably looked at some of the similar things that you're talking about with Below Deck, in particular, the drinking culture and how it's promoted by production. Also loving what you were just saying about Luann, about Megan, about Holly Whitaker, who wrote Quit Like a Woman, has a really great line in that book that says the only advertising big alcohol needs is a woman with an Instagram account. And like when I read that, it was such a gut punch. I was like, oh my gosh, like I've been that person. I've been that person who put all of my social activities and highlighting drinking culture all over my Instagram and Facebook page, right? Yeah, it's so ingrained in our culture to do that. Yeah, and it is. I mean, just again, going back to that point about production, I think it's so, so valid. And you're right. That's where the conversations need to be starting and happening, is what or how are we pressuring these folks into liquid courage, and to heighten the drama.
Mhm. Well, and I think that, listen, obviously we want to watch, right? We all watch. I've been watching since season 1, episode 1 of Orange County. I'm in. You have me, right? But do better. Like you can do better. There's still going to be lots of other drama and things happening that's going to hold our attention, but let's just be a little more intentional and thoughtful about the messaging, because there's a real opportunity here. And I think, in my opinion, I think when Bronwyn, I will never forget the episode when it's, I can't remember what season it was. I want to say it was like 12 or 13. I don't know. But where she says, "My name is Bronwyn and I'm an alcoholic." And then the episode, I think, ends, or at least it went to a commercial break. I was like, holy shit. Right. And then she very bravely got sober on camera. What the fuck? I mean, she drank on camera and did a lot of embarrassing things. So there's that. But like, that was, I thought, incredibly brave. And whether you love her or hate her, it really doesn't matter. But she's walked the line, I think, really well for someone public facing that is claiming that they're living a sober lifestyle now. And, as we say at the Sober Curator, we think that getting sober matters. We don't care how and we don't care why. But if it's your choice to live that lifestyle, let's talk about how to stay entertained, inspired, motivated to keep going, because we're all here because we believe in long-term recovery with ideally no days off. Right. And so I think that Bronwyn was such a great example of how it could be done. And then I don't know why she's not on the show, but my guess is they wanted her out because they didn't want the content. I'm sure it was more complicated than that, to be clear. And so I don't know. That's just what I think.
I had a thought about that as well. If Kyle Richards didn't have the star power that she does, and it were maybe someone of lesser following or not a total OG, coming out and saying, "I'm sober, I'm not going to drink anymore," what would that do in terms of her positioning on the show? Because clearly the producers, they can't love this as a storyline. I mean, yes, it gets a little bit of buzz, but it, nowhere near the amount had she been continuing to drink, doing the splits, showing her bits, the whole 9 yards, right? Like that clickbait gets a lot of attention. And so producers have to be a little bit like, dang it, Kyle,
I totally agree. I think that the way the story is told is so important. And so when you get these producers, writers, or suggesters saying to these cast members, hey, we want you to kind of maybe question this or talk about this. I don't know how it's done. Alex, you seem to have a really good idea of that. But it seems to me that the storytelling and the positioning and the framing of the whole thing makes such a big difference. Every time I've ever seen Kyle's sister, Kim, and this is why part of the reason why I chose to be her today, is because she is just a hot mess, in my opinion. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that I see myself in that sort of manic, almost like, some days I'm really, calm and zen, and other days I'm woo. And I don't know, if she's currently sober or not. It's not my business. But I just find it interesting that sometimes it seems to be a little more exaggerated one way or another, or the narrative is tried to be spun a certain way.
Yeah, I hear that. And like Luann, when you fell into the bushes, hilarious. We all laughed. That's actually really dangerous to be so drunk you're falling off of something. Like, if she had gotten seriously injured, that clip would never have aired. We all know that, right? So like, that's not funny. That shouldn't be celebrated at any age. But as we get older, our bones are really not going to be looking forward to those kinds of falls. And so I just think there's enough other funny storylines that this one doesn't have to be a part of it. And it's just time for the conversation to change. And you can have both. I think that's the other thing, is they could easily have everyone drinking together and having a blast. It's just that the alcohol-free people will be drinking whatever alcohol-free product they want to have sponsored. And they could show them all getting along and having a great time. That's possible. I know it is, because that's my lifestyle. I hang out with drinkers all the time. I'm totally fine. I did still fall in a bush once, but it's fine. Just kidding. I didn't.
We saw the dangers of the drinking in Salt Lake City too. Was that last season or the season before with Heather's black eye? Was I totally entertained and completely invested in the storyline? Absolutely. I wanted to know how Heather got the black eye on Salt Lake City. but the root of that is that they were blackout drunk and nobody remembered the story, right? And so this talk about like we can do better, I absolutely agree with it. Yeah, I mean, I love that. Let's show the products that people are choosing to stay sober with. Let's highlight that there are many, many options for folks.
And that's why production will always make sure to have a on-set medic for moments like this. There's also extremely robust contracts. Their liability insurance is millions and millions of dollars to account for anything like this that might happen. And to Amy's point, there's a very particular way that you elicit information, and these shows are very, very heavily edited. It doesn't seem that way, but it completely is. And usually it happens so naturally. You'll sit down, you'll go through the whole interview with the producer and give your honest reactions, your honest remarks. That producer will have another producer in their ear playing back the info and saying, hey, follow up on this, follow up on that. And then after they do their follow ups, they're literally feeding them the exact line that they want that person to say, whether it be a summary of an answer that they gave, or they're just going to go through and do a wild. A wild is something in the industry where it's just a canned reaction where you're gasping, you're crying, you're happy, you're sad. And that kind of becomes stuff that they'll just kind of cut to interchangeably and completely out of context in order to build more drama. And especially when a cast member is intoxicated, they can just much more like, this is going to sound super fucked up, but they can control them. They can then have them not argue back and just say whatever it is that the production wants them to be able to say. So, in a lot of cases, it makes their job easier when it's someone who is sober and who is of a higher status where they're able to really negotiate that contract and kind of stipulate what they want and what they don't want shown. As you get later on, you may even have control over, not complete control, but some control over what makes it into the final cut. That's probably why they can't really get rid of Kyle at this point. She has too much power. And even though production clearly doesn't like it, I think they should really try to take a note from their colleagues over in the music industry to kind of go back to what Megan was saying about music. We're seeing now more and more artists talking about being in recovery and writing songs that are powerful and impactful and raw and honest about it and talking about this epidemic because it's not funny. We're going to be in 2025. And I mean, I wouldn't want to be on national live TV, blackout drunk, falling over, and being reminded of that every single day of my life and being like, wow, like I make my money because of my disease. It's much more impactful, and production should really, really realize there's people like us that want to root for people to get better. Like when you're a genuine fan, you want to see them get better. You want to celebrate them. And look at someone like Jen Shaw, not sober, but like they did a fucking FBI raid. I want to see more of that. I want to see her like in court. I want to see Emily D. Baker and the law nerds analyze it and like talk about like what's going on. And that doesn't involve any sort of like alcohol. It's just a legal drama that I personally am like very invested in.
Yeah, I think we're being sold short as the audience. You make so many great points there, Alex, and I feel like I'm stunned. I'm getting such a behind the scenes education right now from what you're sharing, and I'm going to be watching with a whole different lens when I tune in tonight to Salt Lake City. So thank you for that. And I think I'm having I'm feeling it in my body too when you're talking about this, manipulation is what I'm hearing from production about being able to orchestrate and control and maneuver reactions, responses, and what we see. And I'm having a reaction to that because my experience of sobriety is power with, right? I come into spaces of collective care, just like you're saying, like we're all rooting for each other to get better, to heal whatever it is that we need to heal, and to be fully present in our lives. And to hear that there's the issue with the alcohol, however that is poured into the set, literally and figuratively. And then there's the manipulation of the power, right? The power dynamic. Yeah, I don't like, I might refrain from saying this, but there's a whole dynamic around it being women in particular being controlled, right? And how alcohol is particularly marketed to women, moms in particular. I mean, that could be a whole other sit down and panel discussion. But what you're saying is just really, really highlighting that for me. And I'm going to be watching differently.
It occurs to me that a really organic way to bring in more sober stories would be through the next generation, right? Like maybe because that's what's happening, really. That's where they're not interested in having themselves filmed blackout drunk and have that on social media. They're not interested, or they're interested in all of these really cool alternative wellness drinks or other ways of having fun. And that could be even a drama, like the different generations not really understanding each other. And yeah, I just think there's probably a whole other sponsorship budget that could be inserted here with the massive growth of those types of beverages and that are interested in being marketed as well.
It's almost like we should see things as like wellness as a way of life, as some might say.
What a catchy phrase.
I know. Yeah. I think I heard of like a podcast of that name, but I don't know. But something that I had wanted to kind of circle back to is just kind of the shock with Kyle's character and the misunderstanding of what it means to be someone who is questioning, and how valid that phase of the LGBTQ plus community is. As someone who is an openly bisexual woman, I completely relate to that, where it's like you're just like going through your life and then you pause and you're like, oh my God, I have a crush on my friend and she is hot as hell. What is wrong with me? What is happening right now? I don't ever recall like being into that. Like I'm a straight. I'm in this cute little conservative town where like no one's gay. Like what is wrong with me? I like guys, but come on, she cute. And that happens. Sexuality is completely fluid. Just because you're leaning more towards a femme energy or a masc energy doesn't mean that you're completely defined on this binary. And I personally like that they're exploring it. I wish they could do it in a more delicate way and in a way that is more kind of championing and supporting. But, that wouldn't be too interesting enough. And I don't know. I just feel like we're so far from the early 2000s where we would be infatuated with like Paris Hilton and Britney Spears and like, oh my God, like Page Six and New York Post, they're so drunk. Like, we're so fascinated by this. Like, but they were making money and we were fascinated by them having a complete mental breakdown. And that's horrific when you really realize it. And why can't it be that we're like obsessed with them when they're like out of rehab? And it's like, oh my God, they like totally took care of themselves and this is amazing. They're going to rise like a phoenix. And now Lindsay Lohan is in like Hallmark movies and Netflix movies and like amazing again. And like, well, her acting skills need work, but like, you know what I'm saying.
Alex, I'm so glad. That's exactly where I wanted to go, is like, we're not in the 2000s anymore. We're not celebrating. We still love celebrities. Of course we do. We're always going to love celebrities. We're not going to be able to get around that, but we're not rooting for their downfall. Like, especially when we've all had our own downfall and had to pick our fucking selves up by the bootstraps and move on. We're rooting for them to get well. And that's the trend that needs to happen. That's where we're at. And I think the 2000s were so muddied with all of that really negative media headlines. And then the teens were like, there was just so much happening in the digital space and so much explosion happening in social media in all the different ways. And then we crash land into a pandemic that went on for far too long, right? But here we are. And I think it's also telling that the shows, I mean, for a very long time, the shows were incredibly segregated. And you're seeing more of a blend now on the shows. And I understand that's also a very delicate issue, but it's if I really do feel like if they want to keep me as a viewer, they need to grow up. They need to level up, because I'm focused on thriving now. That's the stage I want to be in my life right now, and that's the kind of content I want to consume because that's what feeds my soul. And I don't want to watch the drunken arguments anymore just to see their handbags. I don't need to do that anymore. I've got other places I can go look at handbags. So they need to figure that out, or they are going to lose me.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think it's so inspiring to have that whole concept of the hero's journey. And I think there's something pretty messed up if what we're saying is, oh, you're going to turn your life around? Nah, like we're not in it for that, pass. And I think, and maybe this is just because of where I'm at in my life, my old age, I don't know, but I just find myself drawn toward more inspirational content in general. And to be perfectly honest, sometimes I can only take small doses of some of these shows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank goodness for the Hallmark Channel as the palate cleanser, right? I actually watched Hot Frosty last week. Highly recommend. Yeah, I'm curious to hear if any of you, being super fans of the shows and all of the franchises, have you ever found yourself triggered by watching the show? I certainly have. There have been moments where I'm like, I can't take it. I have to turn it off. Most especially around Shannon's DUI on the OC that this past season. It was just too much. It was too much for me to watch a couple of episodes, and I felt like I had to turn it off. Not that my sobriety was in jeopardy. I wasn't going to drink. I wasn't triggered in that way, but the triggering feeling around like just the deep emotion and the work that takes place in recovery that people don't see. I often call it the work of winter. It's the stuff that's happening in the root system that no one gets to look at, that no one understands. And to have that just highlighted over and over and over again made me feel all kinds of things.
With Shannon's stuff, I didn't get triggered. I wasn't triggered in the way I wanted to drink, but I was cringing because, it's her choice to keep drinking and to decide where she's at. But that was a horrific accident, right? And people were having reactions to her continuing to drink. And that part made me really uncomfortable because it also feels like just another variation of rooting for someone's downfall. And we also know no one's going to quit until they're ready to quit. So there's no point in telling them that they need to or that they should. And we've made an intentional decision at the Sober Curator. We love to share out sober headlines from other media sources that we see, but you're never going to see us sharing something out about somebody in a negative sense. It's only going to be through the sense that they're celebrating a sober milestone, or they just got out of rehab, and that is something to celebrate. You're never going to see us resharing content of the negative source. And that's not because our heads are buried in the sand and we're ignoring the fact that all this stuff is still happening. A lot of us are on the front line in our personal life, helping people get out of those trenches. We just don't need to talk about it on social media because that's not the place for that work. But I just think there's that part the Shannon storyline made me very cringy. I did not like it. It made me, I hope whatever her situation is, she gets the help that she needs.
And shameless plug for the Sober Curator, the Sober Sip. Unlike some newsletters that are out there, we really, really like to focus on those success stories And also, like, we'll take the time to talk about coming back from a lapse or a recurrence and celebrating that with that person, because it's so important to be open and vulnerable and talk about that, because it's a part of the journey for some people, and recovery is not linear. It is a twisty, windy road.
Has anybody else found themselves triggered?
I haven't found myself triggered. I do find that I'll just kind of turn it off. Like, I'll get really annoyed by it. And like, certain shows I can't even really watch anymore. Like, I used to be obsessed with Selling Sunset. And now I'm just like, I can't anymore. Like, it's just so trivial. They've completely lost me. And like, certain aspects of the Real Housewives franchise, I usually like to watch the ones where there's someone sober and I can feel like, on some degree, I can relate to them. Like, I'm not in a mansion, I'm not super rich, but like, I can relate to them with the fashion and with them being more real, which is something that we've really noticed as the evolution of media, where reality TV really sprang out of the OJ Simpson trial and that live media coverage of the car chase. That was where the original idea came from it. And the OG reality TV is our network's news stations, which are no longer news, they're opinion stations. And so there's always been this fantastical, over the top element to it as it's evolved. And then they kind of lost their footing when influencers started coming out and talking about mental health, talking about sobriety, talking about being in long term sustained recovery. And production will try to make them seem relatable, but they'll do it in that kind of old school reality TV way that's just really cringe. And in my opinion, we need more new blood and diverse voices in the writer's room. And as the executive producers and the producers, like, people who are actually invested in telling these stories and telling these stories right.
I love everything that you just said, Alex, and I have a lot of opinions about the media landscape. And while I've been in the media industry forever. And so I was in newspaper when everyone's like, newspaper was dying. So then I went to magazines, print is dying. Then I went to TV is dying. I'm like, oh my God, we're all dying. Get over it. Right. But what's happening is we are watching in real time the fall of traditional media, and it is going to go hard and fast. And the Gen Z and younger, they didn't ever want to watch traditional media. They're completely annoyed by their parents that still do, right? They are the TikTok mentality, the streaming mentality. And so what I think is happening is everything's going to go niche. Everybody's going to, and because you can only watch so much content in a day. Right. And so I think everything's going to go niche. And I think what we're doing collectively as the group at the Sober Curator, we're on the right track. We're basically making our own self-help reality show, whether it's here in a Riverside room or whether it's one of our articles on the site. That's what this group is doing. And we're doing it specifically for the audience that we know that wants it. We're doing it because we all want it ourselves and we couldn't find it. So we're like, fuck it, we're going to build it ourselves.
Two little things. One, I don't know if you saw the other day, Ben Affleck talking about, is AI going to take out the movie industry? And he's like, no, it's going to maybe take out different parts of it. But what we're going towards is, you want, this housewives with these characters interacting on this plot, and 9 seconds later, you have your personalized episode. Thought that was really cool. And I just wanted to say that I think what really holds communities like the Sober Curator apart is we're all about calling people up, not calling people out. And it's like it's a different vibe than some of the franchises that sort of rely on calling people out.
Something that's being really highlighted in this conversation in the past few shares is just how engrossed we are as a culture in before and after culture, in the makeover and the transition. And here was my life before alcohol, and look at what a fucking mess it was. And here's my life after alcohol, and everything is shiny and pretty, and I've lost 20 pounds and I've remarried and all of these things. But we all know that the work is the messy part in the middle, as I love to call it, the caramel center of transformation. It's sticky, it's gooey, it's messy, it's sweet and delicious. And it's really fucking hard to get through. It's really hard to get through. More stories about the messy middle. More stories about the messy middle. That's my vote.
I love the Real Housewives of New York, and I'm just getting to know the new cast. But I will tell you that I am so enthralled and engrossed in the characters of Jenna Lyons and Raquel and Uba that do not drink alcohol. They're so fabulous. The fashion is so amazing. They are so high up in the art world and the fashion world, design, that I don't pay attention to the other characters. The other characters seem really dumb because they're drinking and they're very basic bitch. And then you have fucking Jenna Lyons. And she's like, no, don't even get near me with that alcohol. And so I watch that show and I'm like, just get rid of all the other people. Like, their storyline is so trivial. It almost feels like it's third graders with adults. I mean, it seems like there's a massive age difference, and there really isn't. It's just that the people not drinking have something intelligent to say and show for their lives. And, I'm thrilled to see, what are they going to wear? What are they going to talk about? And then of course with Raquel and Jenna also talking about the LGBTQ, that's one of the first times we've seen in the Housewives series, two same-sex relationships. And those are so exciting to watch. I mean, like, all of that. I'm loving that. Not so much loving the other characters. Like, I don't give two shits about the other people.
I love that too. Jenna Lyons is a fucking icon, like absolutely fantastic, amazing. And what I love about New York too is those stories are highlighted and there's sufficient drama. I wanted to know who the leaky pigeon was.
Also, I'm
If
just
you've
going to
been
start
watching.
using the word pigeon all the time now. Like, oh my God, let's start a sober pigeon account. Let's do it.
Who's the sober pigeon?
One thing I just quickly wanted to say, looping back to Anne Marie, when you're talking about the triggers, is when I was drinking, especially with friends, I was looking for connection. That's what I was looking for, right? I was looking to feel a part of something. And the perceived friendship and connections that the show likes to portray will occasionally suck me in a little bit. And I'll have to remind myself, just like when I wake up from a bad dream, like, okay, this isn't real. I'll have to just remind myself of that and remind myself that, this is TV. And, these people's relationships, it's again, it's spun a certain way to create a certain perception that I'm obviously getting sucked into. But for me, that's what it is to remind myself, hey, hold on a minute. The connections that I have with people today are authentic, because if I'm not comfortable in my own skin today and I can share that with you, that builds a bridge. And it's a way for me to become my authentic self. And I want more of that in my life. And I want more of that from the stuff that I watch.
Well, and I want to circle back to Anne Marie. You're bringing up the messy middle, because you're absolutely right. I think I'm looking around the room. I think I am the old timer on this call, probably in actual birth age, but also in sobriety time. Not that I think that time is everything. I don't. I absolutely don't. But there's not a level that we arrive at. There's a woman that I mentor, and a couple months ago, she was like, Alysse, how many years did you have before you stopped being an asshole? And I was like, I'll let you know when it happens. Like, that's the thing. And so I'm hoping to not die anytime soon. So I want to surround myself with people and content that is helping me become my next version of next. That's helping me have classier problems. It's a phrase we use all the time in the office that I work at. Classier problems, right? I'm never going to be perfect. I'm always going to be flawed, but I would like to stop making some of the same mistakes over and over again. I'd like to make some brand new ones. And it's not a strive for perfection. I know that's never going to happen, but I am so far removed from the girl in her 20s that referred to herself as Blackout Bryson, Bob for short. I don't know who that girl is anymore. But I don't not love her. She was an important part of what made me me, but I don't ever want to return to her. And so, and I don't, the shows that we watched in it, back then, they wouldn't speak to me now. I mean, some of them would out of for nostalgia reasons, but not, a lot of things haven't stood the test of time. Sex in the City. You guys know I love Sex in the City. You go back and watch some of the old episodes, they don't still fly. They don't really work, right? And so I think that's a perfect example of content in whatever form, television shows, movies, Broadway musicals, podcasts, books. It has to keep evolving. And that's part of the reason that I launched the Sober Curator and I went to find all of you, is because we need the stories of the people with 10 years, with 8 years, with 15 years, with 40 years, and the problems they're having today. I don't care how you got sober 10 years ago. What's your problem right now and how are you getting through it? That's what I want to know. Also, what's really funny and what's the trending like shoe or handbag? That's what I want to know. I also want to rewind. I don't know if you guys missed it, but a moment ago, Kate had to drink something and she had to hold on to her hat, her disc, and lean very carefully back. And I just hope that we can get a clip of that in slow-mo because it was really good for me.
I'm
It's
dead.
called.
It's just like, it's such a work of art. Kate, your
So
commitment and
good. It's
dedication
the
is
commitment is all there.
awe-inspiring.
It's really not. It's just upside down.
I'd like to just say, as frustrated as I was with Vanderpump Rules this past year, I'm really, really sad that it's not coming back. Because
Yeah.
what you're talking about, what we're talking about with the messy middle, there was so much messy middle on that show, and a younger generation as
They
well.
should
I
have
mean,
kept
those folks
going.
are
Yeah.
younger than the women on the Real Housewives, and I think it's showing this part of the culture thanks to movements like Dry January, Sober October, all of those things, that we can normalize sober curiosity. And we can talk about, it's okay to see the relationship that people are navigating with alcohol as, yeah, I'm trying this for a while. I'm doing 30 days. I'm not drinking tonight. I think it's Lala is sober. Both of the Toms have given sobriety a try, in and out of sobriety, and Sheena too, I think, right? Maybe somebody else on the show that I'm missing, but I was fascinated by watching those stories and really, really was able to celebrate every attempt, because we all know that every attempt is cumulative when it comes
Yep.
to leading to sobriety. One of those times is going to be the last time.
Well, and because you
And
learn something.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go into sober shots. Sober shots is where I ask a round fire of very quick questions and you just answer, boom, boom, boom. Are you guys ready? Here we go. Tomorrow you get a phone call. You're going to be on any housewife franchise that you want, and you have to commit to it for 3 seasons. What city do you go to? Kim Richards, I'm starting with you.
Orange County.
Luann,
New York.
Sutton,
Salt Lake City.
Dorit,
New York.
Leah.
I would probably stay where I'm at, New York.
That makes sense. All right. Next question. You only get one designer handbag to carry for the rest of your life. Which one is it and why? I'm going to start with you, Dorit.
Well, I guess the Louis Vuitton Neverfull, the new one, is reversible.
Okay, fair. Leah?
And I can keep everything I own in it.
Leah, aka Alex.
I would stick with my just the classic Chanel, the classic silhouette, the quilted bag.
And Sutton, would you still have Merce in your purse?
Yeah, I would have Burst in the purse, but it would be an Hermes, simply for just the artwork of it.
Fair. Luann?
Yeah, I'm not really a handbag kind of Hermes if I had to pick one.
Right.
Black.
And Kim?
I myself am a Chanel quilted bag girl too. I just love those, and I don't like the flap. I just like the big one that you can fill, kind of like the Neverfull.
And now here I thought you were going to go for a fanny pack or a backpack. I really had you for a fanny. Okay. All right. Well, that's a wrap here on the Real Sober Housewives of the Sober Curator. We thank you for tuning in, and check back, because one of our favorite things to do is to wear bananas outfits and talk about sober pop culture. So remember that getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. Keep it fun, keep it real, and keep it sober. Thanks for tuning in, because let's be real, we're way more fun than your ex's drunk texts.
If you laughed, learned, or just need more of our voices in your life, honestly, I mean, who wouldn't? Hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and send this episode to your sober or your I swear I'm only drinking on the weekends besties.
And if you have a story, feedback, or hey, maybe you just want to slide into our DMs like it's 2012, well, you know we're here for it. Find more curated magic at thesobercurator.com. And remember, getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober.